On today's show, I'm going to be talking with Count Spankula, or some call him Spankula the Count, and maybe he'll tell us his real name. I don't know, but he was just the subject of an intensive documentary called, and I love this name, Spanky Was a Punk Rocker, and it explores his time with the band Dead Vampires and his creative passions before, during, and after, which includes collecting horror memorabilia, going to horror conventions, and gluing lots of rhinestones on men's sport coats. So, welcome to the show, Spanky.
Oh, thank you.
So, how would you like to be addressed? You know, what do you like people to call you?
I just go by Spanky.
And Count Spankula, that's more like when you're in the band, your drummer name.
Yeah, and Spanky Love account is my email, so it just sounds fancy. Spanky Love account.
Well, this episode's going to be different because obviously, you know, I know you better than most of my guests, and I did spend about 5 years making a documentary of you, so full disclosure. But in a nutshell, just explain what this documentary is and why you let someone get so nosy with your life for 5 years.
Well, really, I've always wanted something that could share some piece of me, but really, it kind of comes to being getting a piece of you out there before you're dead and gone and leaving at least one thing behind. And so the one thing you can leave behind is an hour-long segment on stuff you've done. So I think it's fascinating, all the things that we get to do in life, and there's so much more to be done, but what has been done is a lot, and it's fun to share. And I don't find myself to be a person who puts myself on video all the time and is annoying all over the internet. So it's just 1 hour of it. It's just one piece. It's finally happened.
And I think a lot of times we think, oh, if someone's going to be in a documentary, you know, they have to be Julia Roberts or Albert Einstein, you know, these mega, you know, popular household names. And yet technology now lets us give the stories and, you know, make documentaries of people at all different levels. And, you know, and you're no slouch. You're in this really cool horror punk band in Seattle, I think starting around the mid 2000s. And you know, you guys made a name for yourself. You put out records, you did shows. And, you know, for me, what I got out of doing this was just to be reminded most artists won't have people coming up to them and say, hey, I want to do a documentary of you. If you've created something, you know, you have to preserve that yourself, your legacy and your history. And I just want to know your thoughts. You know, you obviously had wanted to preserve your artistic legacy, but no one had really come, you know, banging on your door, you know, demanding to do it. So I'm just wondering, if I didn't ask you, do you think you ever would have, you know, made a documentary of yourself?
I think I would have tried and failed, but I always have all this stuff in my surroundings of many shows. So no matter what, if it's documenting me or the band or whatever, then that is something I couldn't have done on my own. I just have all the pieces, and I always need somebody to help me put together the pieces. You did that. You helped put this puzzle all together. And, you know, there's about 50 shows that are almost an hour long each that I have put on video. So if that was a part of the film, you know.
Well, a big part was your concert footage. And I know a woman named Julie Wickstrom, you know, would go to your concerts and take amazing footage, which was invaluable. So, you know,
Right.
I give her so much credit. And just for, you know, 15 years later, you're the one to keep those. I mean, what are they? High 8 tapes, and just to catalog that. I know a lot of people, 15, 20 years ago, those tapes might be lost, or, they recorded over them. So it is like this village it takes to preserve stuff, whether it's the friend or the girlfriend or the boyfriend of someone in the band coming to the shows, because the band can't do it while they're performing. So it's always the support people who are taking photos and video and somehow preserving your performances.
Right. And where where I would say so.
That damn phone. Continue, please.
Oh, you have to beg these people to do this. You have to beg them to come. You have to beg somebody to hold the camera because I would buy cameras. Julie would buy cameras. We were trying to keep up with cameras, but Julie wanted to stay with photography as well. And as I watched all these recordings, the majority of these later shows were done by Coco, which was Zach's and still is Zach's wife. For the entire time, The Dead Vampires has been a weird little love story, but she held the video camera and then Julie was taking all the photos. And that's why we have a mix of both of those at all these shows. And then, Julie could do video and camera and take stills from all that. So both of them, the ladies of Dead Vampires.
Well, what we're going to do is really get into the making of this documentary and then what it kind of spurred in you and kind of the aftermath. And then we're going to just talk about, where you're at today. And, we've had lots of talks about just what do we do as creative people when we don't have a project to work on? And, what have we lost interest in? What are we interested in now? Your creative journey is very interesting. And some of it's sweet and fun, some of it's angry, which I would hope so, since you're in a punk band, as wearing a vampire mask. But I also, want to wrap it up with, just talking a little bit about, attempting a creative life in this day and age, and the risks you take. Everyone wants to be in a band, everyone wants to make a movie, everyone wants to do something cool, but it's always fun to talk about the reality of it. And especially, when you're not 19 anymore, going approaching middle age, and what do you do with all this experience at this point in your life? So we're going to tackle a lot, Spanky.
Okay.
And you sound very enthusiastic. That
Bring it.
Bring it. Oh my god, wasn't that the name of a cheerleader movie? Which is
Yeah.
which in another life I would picture you like writing and directing, one of those vicious rival cheerleader movies where the two
Well,
cheerleading squads, go to a competition and they're real bitchy to each other.
yeah. Savage Streets meets Pandemonium.
Exactly. Meets the Disney Channel.
No, not at all. Not if we have anything to do with it.
You would write the hard-hitting Savage Streets inspired, then after it goes through all this studio involvement, it'll be like the next High School Musical on Disney. Anyway, we're getting ahead of
Keep it
ourselves.
carried.
So, in a nutshell, you've told your story many times. In the end, everyone's going to have to watch the documentary to fully know, but give me the rundown of how you first got the idea for Dead Vampires, what you were doing in your life when you thought, I want to start a band. And then once you did, the people you attracted and what it kind of morphed into when it became the full, Dead Vampires with singing and gigs and traveling. Take us through those crucial years.
Okay, so it really started by this lust for monster horror TV hosts. And so MySpace was happening, and there was these visions of all these horror hosts who were just here and there and everywhere. And pictures, I think the internet just started exploding with visions. And so I really wanted to recreate a horror show. And so I got help painting sets. I got help bringing huge pieces of junk home so I could paint them. And I basically started building a castle in the kitchen, and I was creating a backdrop more than anything. And then needed to play music too. There was going to be a monster band, but I didn't know how to get a monster band. But was I going to have to be every single piece of this horror show? Was basically the first thought I had about Dead Vampires. And then I knew of a couple people that could be in this who could help and who the female would be and all that kind of stuff eventually as things would come together, but it was taking a really long time to come together. So by the time we got a drum set from like a $35 sale at a guy at work, I brought this thing home and had to build it piece by piece. And I was just told to keep on banging on it from my friend Matt. And so I kept practicing, and then Matt was eventually next to me, and we were able to work together, and he was able to show me how to move somewhat on these drums. It was very caveman, and so we even got called, like, we had a caveman stomp, and it was very bat cave sounding, so bat cave and caveman. So it was a cool sound that I was starting to get for a monster show if this monster show was to ever happen. But I kept on collecting pieces and Halloween gear and more costumes, and basically I turned into a shopaholic that couldn't stop finding things for this dream show. So while I'm shopping for all these things, I'm still practicing with my friend Matt, and we wanted to cover certain songs. We wanted to cover a lot of Ramon songs and Kiss songs, and a circle jerk song called Casualty Vampires, which was way too hard for me to play. But I kept practicing it, and I liked it so much I wanted to call us the Casualty Vampires. And shortly after that, we just kind of just started to think about what a casualty vampire is. And it's somebody who loves to watch an accident on the side of the road and see the blood and guts and gore. I mean, we like it fake and we didn't want to be real, so casualty vampires started fading away as a name that it was like I didn't want to be a faces of death, traces of death kind of band. We wanted to dive way more into a Pee-wee's Big Adventure kind of feel. So it went into the Return of the Living Dead kind of feel, and it turned into Dead Vampires, just being like another living dead kind of thing. And we would be by the dead milkmen and the dead Kennedys and the record pile and whatever, you know. All of a sudden, we had a cool name. So all this stuff that we were playing at my house, I was recording, and so I started to make all of our music into CDs. And so every time I would talk to people about this band, Dead Vampires, I'd have music to prove that I had this band. And sure enough, there was this demand that it should be playing live. And when that was presented to me, I was a little nervous, but I went and did it, and it had to be costume band. It had to look like this monster band that was supposed to be in my TV show, but you know, if I'm going to play in a punk bar, I can't have my TV show too. So we're just gonna go be that little monster band and do whatever we can to be funny and memorable and try to get better. So we did. We went and we played, and it was a success. And I feel like Zach and Doc were there, either the first show or the second show, and they had witnessed us. And basically, I didn't have the biggest group of friends in rock and roll, so like when they like came up to me and were wanting to be like rock and roll friends and perhaps play with us, it was, of course, yeah. So I brought them in really quickly. Like Zach came and played with us really fast, and we were playing and sounding like the Munsters. All of a sudden, our music was shifting into like a cool Munsters vibe that could play Kiss music and Ramones and Misfits. And then, I hear about Doc, who was also at a show, at the same show. So I get questioned if we should bring him in to sing because he saw us and liked us too. So yeah, bring Doc over. And so the next thing you know, we're like a 5-piece band. So that was the assembly of Dead Vampires. And after that, like you learn your guitar parts, you'll know them when you make it, and you do the keyboards, you do the theremin, and make up whatever, sing whatever. But I just wanted it to stay funny, and that was basically my main goal. It was be a costume band, be funny, and it just turned into what it was. Go, Kelly.
Well, when you say, you're making this castle in your kitchen and doing all this stuff, my first thought was, even before you thought this was going to be a band, it kind of reminds me of, the club kid scene. Did you at first think maybe you just be put on parties and clubs and like be this happening?
Mm. Yeah, I should have been more open-minded to having more house parties, actually. I was like, I needed it to be something more, and that's why it never got finished. But if it was just a house party and people always came over, oh my God.
Well, did you throw any house parties?
No, no, not really. It would have been awesome that way to be a club kid house party punk version of a monster club. It was going there, but it was just a practice space. But I could have like thrown monster parties with the cool paintings. We painted stone walls and a whole bunch of wallpaper pieces for it, and had big pieces of foam core and a doorway.
And did you use that when you finally, went to clubs and played with the band? Did they ever let you incorporate all this?
I took as much as we could, but not everything got to go because we needed bigger vehicles. And yeah, I mean, at the start of this, I took as much as possible, and I made everybody take as much as possible. So we filled our cars, trying to make a very Kiss looking haunted house, fun house stage.
Well, because at a lot of clubs, especially punk rock nightclubs, the stages can be tiny. So I can just imagine you showing up for a gig, at this scrappy club with a tiny stage, and you're unloading the van, and it's like you're setting up for Miss Saigon. And they're thinking, what the hell are these people doing? This is
Mm.
this is a tiny punk rock stage, and this guy wants to put on Phantom of the Opera.
Yeah, well, I wasn't afraid to cram it in there. I've seen Guar do it, so I knew it was possible. Nobody was really supposed to be on your stage with you, but you could cram as much stuff on there as you could. Definitely lights and monsters. It just went anywhere,
Yeah.
filled the holes.
So how quickly did Dead Vampires take off? Because I know it started out with you, and then basically your boyfriend at the time, Chainsaw, who played theremin, and you guys were more of, I don't know, I wouldn't say erasure, but more of a non-vocal duo that eventually became, a little more of a rockabilly punk band. So what was the evolution of that?
Well, when you're playing with a keyboard player, you're just trying to have some kind of beat that's not too loud that's just going to blow them away and you can't hear what the keyboard's doing. So the keyboardist was mainly singing. It was being like a robot, kind of the Sergeant Pepper scene where the robots are singing. That is what the keyboard was to me. So the keyboard talked, and the keyboard actually named the majority of those songs by going through my brain and out my hand on a piece of paper to write down these hilarious song titles. And it's all because while I would be sitting there playing and listening to Matt play the keyboard, this hilarious sentence would come through my head. It really sounded like that's what the keyboard was saying. So I could hear a robotic language through it. And that's why I named so many songs. And that's why we recorded so many songs, was because every time we jammed, we had something cool to record. Like we always sounded good. And I would have to prove that by putting together like an anthology collection of all of these demos that I have. And it's something that I think I should work on soon to get
So he was doing keyboard and you were doing drums and you guys were recording this stuff?
yeah, yeah. And I have tons of tapes of that.
Were you even calling yourselves Dead Vampires when you recorded that, or was that kind of like an earlier incarnation of the band?
We were Dead Vampires. The only time we changed the name from Dead Vampires to Moog Fits, Moog, we changed it to Moog Fits because we were going to meet Jerry only, and we knew it. And when we took our cover CD of Misfits and Ramones, this was a really cool time for the Misfits, actually. The Misfits had joined up with Marky Ramone on drums, and they were doing half a Misfit set and half a Ramone set. So we made a CD that was half Misfits and half Ramones. They were all electronic, and they're some of the coolest songs we've ever done. But we didn't want to keep all the cover songs like that as something we didn't want to move into that direction for our next CD. So we were going to give away all the cover songs we knew to the real band that inspired us so much. So we took the CD, and I found Jerry only after the show, and he was walking right towards me, and he was in spandex. He looked like total muscle man, and I stopped him with my hand, and I put my hand on his chest, and I said, "Wait, Jerry, I have to give you something." And I handed him a CD that said Moog Fits, and we made a different cover for it. And I said, "It's just like a Halloween, like Christmas card. So, I just wanted to give it to you as something cool for your collection or whatever." I just didn't. I feel the impact of people getting angry that you cover their music and what are you doing with it kind of vibe. So basically, I wanted to put it in his hands and not get in trouble for it, but I wanted him to hear what your fan club is doing. This is what your fans sound like. And I'm sure he loved it. And later on, an instrumental Misfits CD came out. And I feel, if we inspired something like that, then that's really cool. But it needed to happen. We knew it. And so we did it.
So after you and Matt kind of had this established, at what point did Chainsaw join you?
He was there amongst all the practices. Um, when it came to like doing certain songs, we would decide if we were gonna like have him in it or not, or if he wanted to practice more or whatever just to be in it, or if it was just gonna be like a total noise song. Like, what were we doing? So I didn't want to have control of him, and I didn't also want to like sound terrible either. But it became a big mix. Like, it was pretty loud and swirly, and what he does is very noisy. So if you're trying to cover a Kiss song like Strutter and think about where the theremin goes and like try to like follow along with us too. Like cruise us through this song, Mr. Theremin. So he was always there to make certain things happen throughout our songs. If he wasn't, then he wasn't. But he was around the entire time. I mean, we tried to practice as much as possible.
What's it like to form a band with someone that you're in a relationship with?
I think it's hard because, you know, if people don't even know about their control issues and stuff, don't attempt it. I think you should have bands with people that you're going to have a lot of fun with for sure. Don't get into something that if you're already complaining about stupid shit, then don't get together and get into a band and complain there too. I don't know. Like, don't be in a stupid relationship.
But it worked out well for you because you and Chainsaw seemed to be on the same page artistically. Like you guys were really into, you dressed up as a vampire, he was the bunny. It seems like you embraced that part of it together.
Yeah. So Chainsaw put me to a challenge, and that was to let him do what he was ever going to do. And it was a very liberating time for a relationship to just have them be like such a wild, amazing center of attention, crazy, like sex figure, really, in your band. Like, I mean, how many people take their relationship out and their partner basically is like a Leatherman stripper for the night? Like, and you're going to be totally okay with that. I don't know. To me, it takes a gay relationship and the older you get and the more you work on those relationships and the wilder your relationship can be while you're out is pretty amazing. And I wish people could learn more from it, but I don't think they can. I don't think they can. But to be in a relationship with somebody who goes out and expresses themselves so wildly like that, but doesn't even do that in their like day life. It's just kind of like a stage presence you get. Um,
Well, that'd be
it's
hard to
kind of
sustain at
amazing.
home 24/7.
Yeah, yeah. You wonder, like, if you're watching dead vampires from a distance and you're thinking that man must be this and that at home. Well, only certain people know, but it's a wild life when your partner goes and does that and a crowd. It's cool. I mean, I felt an impact of like lust from another guy out there, and I feel like if those are challenging times for your mental state, then have fun with that. See how that works out for you.
I knew a little bit that Chainsaw had done DJ work down in San Francisco, but it really wasn't until recently I realized the full extent of that. That before he met you, he DJ'd at some really cool clubs and helped organize, you know, his own special party nights. And I'm trying to think of what you would call that. When you one night a month or one night a week, you create the atmosphere at the club, very much, like the club kids scene. And,
Hmm.
and it seems like, with all that experience he had, I'm just curious, how much of that did he bring to the band? And did he share that with you? Say, hey, when I was doing my shows down in San Francisco, this is how we did it. Did he help incorporate some of that into Dead Vampires?
That is exactly what I was trying to say. It's,
But I
that's
said it
what
so much better, didn't I?
you did, and that's what I'm saying. Like, it, I don't need to allow somebody or trust somebody. Oh, just do your thing, and I hope you impress me. Like none of that shit. But he brought his San Francisco, everything he did and partied with, and was like, "Oh, don't worry, I'll have fun tonight," and he did, and that's really amazing. And I'm glad when you can be with somebody in a relationship and they can just go show you, like, this is how I party.
Well, do you
And
think in
chainsaw,
some ways he was less nervous than you, meaning, he had a certain amount of experience, even,
yeah.
a club kid style, party, you're kind of on stage, or if you're in that DJ booth, you're performing. Do you think he brought a lot of that, and was that something that you learned from?
Yeah, yeah, I learned from it for sure. Um, yes, wild people are an inspiration. If you haven't figured out how to cut loose, then hopefully somebody will show you at some point because you are dull if you can't. So,
We
yeah.
have a whole generation now that's being brought up on RuPaul's Drag Race and the internet and seeing a lot of, outrageous things out there. And it's a lot safer environment to do that in. But even 15 years ago, I mean, it was different out there, and it was a lot more bold for you and your lover who had this, club kid sort of, background, putting on these great extravaganzas in gay clubs. But to bring that into a mostly straight punk rock atmosphere, that's what was so different about what you were doing with Dead Vampires.
Yeah, I would say in the doc direction of that's all of us did like Marilyn Manson for sure. So any of this would have fallen into a Marilyn Manson zone of anybody who was there who wanted some shock value or whatever and got it from Chainsaw. I think that's what that is. I mean, I don't think anybody saw anything other than, that's what they want. They want that like they want something out of an Alice Cooper show too. So Chainsaw was there to give it to you.
On the flip side, too, is I think in the gay community, it's like there's some rigid parameters, and I think they're lessening. But it's like, oh, you want to go to a gay club, it has to be this kind of dance music, or oh, you have to worship divas, or oh, you got to love drag shows. And obviously, gay people have much wider interests, but it's almost like, especially back then or back in the 80s and 90s, it was harder to say, oh, I'm gay, but boy, I wish they would play more Sisters of Mercy, oh, I got to go to just, the goth club for that. Even within the gay world, it's like, meeting people, for you especially, when you're sharing your interests with people and the bands you like, what responses did you get from the mainstream gay community when you tried to go out into it and say, I love Kiss and I like the Misfits and I love punk rock, and you know what I mean? What was the response you got trying to express who you were?
I feel it took a really long time to find people that liked music, anything like that I was interested in or anything that I could dig up. So if I grew up really loving New Wave and Kiss and just that whole 80s thing and getting right into like metal madness right away and Twisted Sister and Wasp, then I shifted into punk, and it all happened by the time I was like 15 and 16. Like all of this music had fallen into place. And then, goth and other sub genres start trickling in. But I did them all and I saw how they all went together, and I was experiencing a lot of music like Alice Donna and Jesus Lizard and the God Bullies and local music. So it was a ton of music I was pushing into my system. And so I got into music that was on the West Coast, and it turned out that there was no way that they were going to come over here. I'm going to have to get over there. And so I moved to the West Coast just to hear and see more music I was becoming obsessed with. I just kept learning more and more and more. So, what was the original question here? Because when it comes to music, I mean, I have so many places I go with it.
Well, in the documentary, to me, one of the most interesting parts is you're explaining why you created your own zine. You
Yeah.
basically said you came to Seattle, and even though there's the internet, you were still kind of old school and, making this zine, but you basically compiled all the things you liked, which was Kiss, heavy metal, punk rock, naked leather men, pornography, and you put it all together, in this artistic kind of cut and paste, a lot of clip art, from magazines. You cut out photos of all the men you dug and the
Yeah.
bands you liked. And you have this one moment in the documentary where you say, yeah, I'd go out and I just hand this to people so they would know exactly what I like. And I'm just thinking that's so cool. But at the same time, you hand this out to a lot of people, but I bet a lot of them, the gay crowd, will go, oh my God, heavy metal, I hate that. Or you hand it out to the
Yeah.
punk and metal crowd and they go, oh my God, this is so gay. So it's kind of like you're offending everyone. And I'm just thinking, when did you find that rare person that liked everything that you liked?
You just had to keep on asking who was gay and who listened to punk. And if I heard about you, I would probably try to find you. And I did make my way around and I tried to find people. And not that I did everybody, but like we at least got close enough to figure out, like, if we were going to date in some kind of way. I don't know. It's like that whole who is who at a show. And that's what my whole chit chat was about, kind of like listening to the Donnas and all the boy crazy music that they had. I was extremely boy crazy to find that certain punk rock guy. And so I feel like I found him in many forms. I would even consider some of the straight dudes like still, if they're still around me in some kind of way, we have touched each other's heart in some weird way, and you are still going to be considered like one of these people on the list. You're just as good as the gays, that I have discovered on this journey of finding people that are similar, who likes our kind of music and horror movies and that kind of stuff. And at one point of my life, for a very long time, it felt like these were very strong needs. I needed people that were gay and who liked horror movies and who liked punk rock as well. Like it was a need, a craving. So to put together a porno magazine like that and to add punk rock and horror movies and just make sure that you knew this is the whole horror punk salad that I've got to offer. Oh, and by the way, I'm vegetarian, like I needed this screaming thing because I was screaming on the inside to find somebody else who was gay. And so if they weren't dateable, the screaming continues, where are they?
Well, you had a lot of hoops for your dates to jump through.
Yeah, I still would. I still keep those hoops up.
Although you are happily married now, so you don't have
Yeah,
to.
but still, there are hoops that you can jump, and I mean, have fun jumping them, but they're there.
I mean, can you imagine having to start all over now? And I bet your list would be even longer and pickier.
I don't know.
Well,
It depends on the day. You can be Cher too and date the pizza guy. It's fine.
well, I'm not saying, your approach was stalkerish, but it actually sounds efficient. Like, within the scene, you kind of know of someone and you kind of say, hey, I want to meet them and ask around. I mean, that's not bad. At least you're doing your due diligence, not just blindly, going into it. But what I'm wondering is, you love straight tattooed, macho band guys. As part of your whole thing, did this fantasy man, did you ever think, hey, through my sheer determination, I'm going to bring one of these straight rocker guys over to my side, I'm going to seduce one of these, tattoo gods into my bed?
Yeah, did I think of that all the time? All the time.
Or did you do it? Did you ever succeed?
In certain ways of, I'm just satisfied enough. Yeah. Yeah. Shocked myself a few times, and that's fine. I
Well,
mean, that's good for your ego. It's good for your
but there's something about a guy who's in a rock band,
hmm
and maybe in one situation with his straight friends, there's this kind of, macho, talking about chicks and bragging, but in a different context, when like this sincere gay guy comes up to him, maybe more in private, says, I dig you, I love your band, you're great. They can kind of, disconnect from the gay threat, of their masculinity being, tested, and just kind of enjoy the adulation from this gay guy that really digs them. Was
Yeah.
that your experience? Did you find some of these guys surprised you at times, and it's like they actually liked your attention?
Yeah, but most of the time not enough. I would say one of the best times ever was with Dave Brockie from Guar, how, I was Mr. Puppy Dog Eyes for a while, like a half hour around him until my friend introduced me to him and said, we needed to talk. I had a whole lot of things I needed to ask him and stuff. And he screams, "You want to fuck me, don't you?" And just throws it in my face, knowing that I am the gay fan who is lusting after him. And I have been. And he's has to be aware of it from previous shows. So due to the all that lust that I've thrown at him, he decides, because I think we spent about 2 hours in the backstage area with everybody talking, and then they finally went on, and I went into the front row, and he put on quite a show for me that was like dick in the face kind of stuff, couch dancing, just kind of really talking about me through the microphone, very gay kind of stuff, and that album was super gay. The whole album is filled with gay lyrics. So a Dave Brockie experience show like that, and me actually putting my hand on his dick and getting on the front page of Guar.net, that's a big success for me because after that show I ran upstairs and I saw him in his towel, and he made sure to tell me that I couldn't have his underwear because there were plenty more gay punk rock fags to entertain around the world, but he knew I wanted his underwear. I mean, this was a really cool moment where how many people got to have that much fun and go completely insane? I felt like a screaming Beatles fan going ape shit over him, and he was delivering.
Do you think
So,
forming the Dead Vampires was just a way for you to extend this straight rock god seduction fantasy? Was the band just your vehicle to have access to these guys?
no, but if you considered rock bands having access to that kind of stuff, well, then fine, sure. Like, it certainly would have gone in that direction.
Do you think more guys in bands, especially punk and metal, do you think more of them are bisexual than they admit?
That I do not know, because the bisexual mystery is it's quite a mystery, man. I don't think bisexuals say it enough, and I'm not around their drunk asses to figure it out, but I think they come out at night And I don't know how many there are. I think they're mysterious.
You know, the coming out of Rob Halford. Do you remember when you first heard that?
Um, okay. So when he officially said it, did he come out on Rolling Stone magazine or something? And we all had to like run and check this issue and make sure if it was true. Is that kind of
Yeah,
how?
it was probably in an interview, I'm guessing. Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah, and you had to like run to the newsstand to check an issue and be like, "Yes, I did read it in this." I think that's how that happened for me.
And was that like a revelation? This, masculine,
Yeah.
metal guy that people, really looked up to. The man of your fantasy suddenly becomes accessible.
Yeah, I was in shock actually. I really wasn't overthinking it or sitting around dreaming it. I always loved his clothes, but I never like put it to him that I was like, he just wasn't a guy that I was gonna lust after because why chase him if it doesn't matter? But I wasn't listening to tons of Judas Priest during that time. So by the time he had come out, I was already like in a hardcore punk state and doing all my punk stuff. And I didn't care about metal anymore. Sure, I knew all the earlier Judas Priest, but I wasn't obsessed at all. So the coming out made me look at him again and it made me care more. And it made me reassess the entire situation and go, well, what was happening while he was on tour then? Like, seriously, because Faster Pussycat and all these, like, you know, woman chasing bands that were clearly dressed as women and totally chasing women, confusing me like crazy. What in the world was going on backstage at a Judas Priest concert then? So, from what I see, I feel like he spent a lot of times in like hotels more by himself and like with minimal dates or something. But yes, I had to do all my research. I was pretty obsessed with Rob after that, and I listened to everything. I listened to everything he put out after that.
So when you're lusting after these male, straight, rock gods, rock dudes,
Hmm.
especially with lots of tattoos and decent bodies, and then suddenly they tell you they are gay, they are interested in you. Do you think that would alter then your attraction to them? Would that suddenly take away an element that you actually wanted to be there?
If they actually did tell me that they were gay,
Yeah, and suddenly they were accessible to you and they returned your interest.
yeah, no, I can see it happening actually. I just don't want to be like pushy or anything, but when I'm around certain people, I feel certain vibes and I feel like, yeah, that could possibly go that way. And it doesn't, and sometimes it feels really exciting when you're with somebody who is like famous or you're at a convention or something, it's exciting. And if it did happen, like, yeah, what do you do? I think that's entirely up to you. I
There's a big
feel.
thing that you and I talked about, and some of it made the final documentary and some of it didn't, was what a very macho atmosphere the band world is. Whether it's metal, punk, and not just the bands, but going to these venues, the people that come to watch the bands, a lot of testosterone in the room. And it's even harder, you know, when, say, you're on a bill with another band that's even more, suburban, mainstream rocker guys, the very, the opposite of metrosexual crowd, the type of crowd that would feel very self-conscious if there was any gay element, in any of the bands that was overt. So they're there to see this more, macho straight band. You guys come, you have a very mixed band. A couple of you are gay, you know, three of you are straight or whatever the lineup is. And it's like, you talked to me a lot about just feeling that vibe, and Chainsaw talked about that too. It's not just the bands, but the crowds, and how that kind of exciting, testosterone feeling can also turn into almost fear, like, oh my God, if they, knew we were gay, they might turn on us.
Hmm.
I mean, you've felt that palpably, haven't you, in some of your shows?
Yeah. Um, I think that was more of the anxiety of going there and what's it gonna be like tonight kind of vibe, but I can't remember being completely terrified of any place that I was at during any time. I
Hmm.
did play with a band I did not like, and I remember talking to them afterwards, and I still did not like them, and I didn't like their crowd, and that was probably like 8 bands on one day, but their annoying crowd sucked, but I don't know what to do about that. I just knew that I wasn't going to play with them again, but um I have been in places that I have gone to see a show that I certainly would have wanted to play with. So, say Demented Argo came to town, and I would have wanted to be on this bill, but I didn't have Dead Vampires yet. But I went to this show, and I think it was so terrifying that I left. I couldn't even stay for the first band to come on, let alone 3 or 4 bands that night. So
What
I've seen
terrified you?
scary
Was it the
shows.
band or the audience?
The audience was actually terrifying at this show. I had been to this bar and I was excited to go back to this bar, but the audience was actually so horrible. Like, it was like rockabilly had been shifting into this like gang violence kind of bullshit. And it wasn't like rockabilly shows sounded like they would be fun to be at any longer, because there was a huge skinhead following and there was a huge mishmash of whatever was going on. And when you have this gay anger towards, not first of all, not enough people are gay, and then you add like all the guys are like angry and this is kind of this car rumbling chick banging scene, like they don't go well together. So if you think about how Chainsaw didn't want to play rockabilly shows, it's because, he knows how to bang too, but it's in a leather bar. It's not this car scene. And so that's where this gay clash was coming from. And I've seen gay rockabilly, but it's not that exciting to us. It's kind of like big deal. So we kind of were in a gay rockabilly scene for a little bit, and that's just the kind of dumb place we would have played, but nothing scary. I mean, I think a G.G. Allen show is pretty scary, and I thought that Demented or Go show was scary, so I don't want to do a scary show. I want to go where people are willing to be crazy, or it's just, I don't know, cool lighting or something.
And it's so ironic too, because you're a hardcore horror movie fan, and you can stomach some pretty major stuff, in a horror movie. How do you use horror movies to overcome your fear? You're a big fan of the revenge horror movie, which is,
Right.
quite an interesting subgenre of someone being picked on or bullied or worse or attacked or assaulted, violated, and then to see that comeuppance, that person gets to fight back and make those people pay. How do you parallel that with, growing up a sensitive gay boy who
Oh,
suddenly, embraces this pretty tough music genre? Do you see any parallel there?
yeah, all of it was for protection. I saw My Bodyguard very young and Friday the 13th very young. So this bully thing was in my mind pretty quickly because my brother was 5 years older and he said, certain kids acted certain ways in certain grades in school. So you always had this fear and this warning that something bad was going to come in the next certain amount of years. And so all the movies that I watched was this always thinking of this warning. And so what was going to protect you was something that would, basically destroy the asshole. And so sometimes I would see it as something was getting revenge. And later on, if you think of Linda Blair getting revenge in Savage Streets, it's kind of like that. So it's I guess the world being dangerous was put in my head pretty quickly. I heard horror stories and stuff about the real world, and I heard about serial killers when I was very, very little, and it was scary. That stuff gave me nightmares. I was scared to watch certain things on TV. But when I started to see a different angle that there was an understanding. There was a certain sympathetic understanding to some of these monsters in the movies. They're all
Well,
very different.
you have this crazy love for Savage Streets starring Linda Blair, and it kind of changed your life. That's one part of the documentary I like is when you describe the night you saw it. Could you recreate that for me?
Yeah, it was probably a 4 o'clock showing at a movie theater, but it looked awesome because there was this lady with a crossbow, and I had seen Angel before, so I was into like tough chick movies. And so it just looked like a toughy, really tough movie. We'd seen the trailer on commercial on TV too. So you go to the theater and the cool poster is the cool movie you're going to see. And so, yeah, we got in and we watched it, and I just was in full on shock the whole time that it was so rock and roll and these girls were so badass. The music was cool, and then the greasy, slimy guys were hot, but it was like you were wondering, you put yourself in those positions. So you're wondering what it would be like. But then the guys are like super bad, and then they totally rape Linda Blair's sister, and everybody's pissed off. And then the guys are really bad, and they kill one of the chicks, throw her off a bridge. It's like getting seriously bad, and you starting to form a hate for these guys, and you're really on Linda's side, like what would you do kind of thing. And so her reaction to what would you do was, throwing paint on people and lighting them on fire and shooting them with a crossbow. And at a very small age, I really had enough anger in my head to think that that was the cool thing to do. And so I agreed with her that that was awesome. And so I knew there were deer hunters everywhere, and I'd never seen a crossbow before, but I thought the coolest thing in the world would be to have a crossbow after that. And that was like 1983, so I was only
And I love when then you came home because didn't your like aunt take you to it because you were so young?
yeah, my aunt would take me because I would tell her what I saw on HBO and she'd tell me. And so HBO was all we ever did unless we went to the theater. And so that was one of our choices of movie day, and she brought me home and said, my mom asked how the movie was, and my aunt said, well, there was a lot of bush. And it was severely a lot of bush for me to see at the time. So I wasn't sure at that time of my life, do you look away? What do you do? But it felt like bush and pussy and everything, no matter what age I was at. It was pushed in our faces within our music or within every R movie you saw. It was like it became an annoyance to me, and I'm sorry, but it was just like as a gay child, you're like, where is the dick? And there never was because our movies created this shame towards it, and it's kind of like I don't know. I grew up in a lot of shame zones. And if you think about how much dick we got to see when we were younger, we didn't get to see enough. So fuck that. We're angry, and so the angry gay comes out.
Well, there's no shortage of women who are attracted to men who end up being, violent and abusive. It's at first, though, they like the confidence and the swagger and the muscles and, whatever. But unfortunately, that fantasy can turn into just a living nightmare. But for, a gay man to be attracted to that same kind of straight man, from afar, and then you realize, oh, if he knew you were gay, he'd, probably beat you up.
Hmm.
What's the psychology for a gay guy to be attracted to this abusive straight guy?
I do not know because I honestly see the reality of it in gay culture where there is very dominant sex and people like just are banging real hard. So there's just an attraction to it. I think it's the person who wants it and I don't. And I see it and I think, damn, it's just too hardcore. But you know what? It's just a different person. There, that is totally fine. Like if two guys want to bang it out hard, I'll watch. It's kind of like watching boxing, you know? They're just gonna do it no matter what. So
So
certain
this
people
is
are gonna
about
do it
It was
differently.
about 15 years ago since you started the band, and since you got to be in that world with other bands and the audience, and now you're a little older and wiser. How has your attraction to men changed? Has it mellowed out? Do you look for a more middle of the road balance?
Yeah, I don't think there's not like a punk rock fixation. Like it doesn't matter anymore. There's just too many types. So it doesn't matter. And also, like, I think that everything you ever lusted after, like a movie star or something, it's all faded away. So, in like a granny form, as you get older, oh, forget it. Like it's just been too long waiting, or they've like time actually did take away their beauty and now they're just ugly now. Like the time has expired on so many people. So, speaking of, Squiggy would have been my biggest crush, and Squiggy just died yesterday.
You mean from Laverne and Shirley, Lenny and Squiggy Squiggy?
Yes, and so if you think about how long it would have taken for me, like I think he was very attractive, and how much
Now,
time I
wasn't his
had. Well,
name David something?
yes,
What was his full name?
I can't remember his full name. Isn't that terrible of us? Lang and something.
Yeah, something. And he kind of, well, if you remember him from Laverne and Shirley, had the greaser 50s look with the slicked back hair.
Yeah, very rockabilly.
He was kind of rockabilly, yeah.
Yeah, with
Wow, I'm
confidence.
sorry to hear that he passed away.
Yes,
So,
no, he
so
had
for
MS
you,
for 30 some years.
so for you, when you were first in the band, you were still like in your 20s, right? When you were
Uh,
in Dead Vampires, weren't you like in your late 20s by then?
I don't know. 2004?
Yeah, so about late 20s, it
Oh,
sounds
like
like.
that would be 29, 30. Yeah.
Okay. So as part of you just think back to that time, with this romantic notion of just the young you, and isn't that easy to look back and just to think, kind of ignore the bad parts and just remember what it felt like to be young and everything new and exciting? I mean, is there still that part of you that romanticizes that?
Yeah, it comes in spurts and I have it quite often. And then it's sad when it goes away because it's like you wish things were happening right now. And so, yes, it's just comes in waves.
Because if
The
you try to
same wave
sustain
kind
that into middle age, don't you become like the housewives of Beverly Hills who try to look 25 into their 50s and never kind of give up the party lifestyle?
Yeah, I wish I could do that, but I can't. I can turn the switch off and I can just go to work too. So I have a bunch of switches and I know how to just turn them on and off.
But in spite of that, you still are kind of fueled by your lust and your love for not just, these macho rocker dudes, but just creative people too. And isn't part of being turned on by Guar and bands like that is they're just really talented and creative.
It is that. It is very sexy to be talented and creative. So I find that is the number one thing to most of the attractions that I have no matter what. So like of the artist Skinner, who is a multi-purpose artist or something. I don't know. They can do music and movies and paint and make figures and clothes, and it's endless. And it's like somebody like that is like, oh my God, that's my main, that's my attraction in life is anybody who can be that creative and just every bit of it's good. It's so impressive.
So when you would play a gig with Dead Vampires and you're, playing drums, which is the most tribal of instruments, but all of you, feeding off the energy of the crowd, expressing yourselves creatively. At the end of a show, do you just have this incredible pent up sexual energy?
No, not exactly. I don't know. Sex comes and goes whenever, but most of the time people aren't there for that. So, like, no,
You
no,
didn't feel charged up after everyone, in the audience, idolizing you guys.
no, no. That was a weird time. And that was why I ended up having a leg surgery. So, if I would have been sexually crazed, I would have been in full on pain. So, definitely not. I don't know. I was like, no matter what, I was still a housewife to Chainsaw. And that relationship was very housewifey for a while, till the very, very end. And then we started to act like hoes, I guess. But
So at the time, it was more like Paul McCartney and Wings, and
yeah.
you and Chainsaw were Paul and Linda McCartney.
Yes, yes. So like no, I wasn't sex crazed if you think of Weird Paul and Linda.
So you had some circulation problems with your blood vessels in your legs.
Yeah. So if I would have thought about sex, I would have had circulation problems and I would have gone into full on pain. So I had surgery to have that stopped and it worked.
Did you like
So
have blood vessels removed from your legs?
whatever veins they took out, they took them out, but it's better than ever. It still hurts sometimes, but it's not like
Was
it
it some
was.
weird chain reaction where if you got an erection, it would divert the blood and your leg would throb, or what was it?
Yeah, yeah. Pretty much that. So if you can imagine there was some kind of blood clotting going on and the clotting became very painful, but blood and all that helps circulate air and all this to your heart. So if I would have kept on having these clots, I would have had heart trouble later on. And so I find it difficult to walk and do a lot of steep walking nowadays. So I don't know what it would be like to play drums really heavy at this point of life, anyways.
Well, after the band broke up, you were looking for other creative outlets. So, what were those outlets?
Oh, well, my crafting, I always wanted to keep on drawing and making things. And so I got into clothes for the most part because Dead Vampires really came out of things like a thrift store kind of pile of junk. So if I had a new pile of junk, which would be more sparkly, um, I think I was into the new direction of being a designer. So I started like designing my own clothes. I've done several jackets, like maybe up to 60 or something.
Well, kind of your trademark is men's sport coats, like solid colored sport coats that you put these original rhinestone designs. It's like you attach, in some cases, like hundreds and hundreds, like a ton of rhinestones to these jackets.
Yeah, like 15, 20-pound jackets. And they feel like your armor. They're a disco armor. So I can put all that on blazers and then also a bunch of patches on my jean jackets and just cut up a whole bunch of t-shirts. Mainly, I wear clothes until I change sizes or something and everything turns into patches. The clothes get old. And so a lot of my stuff has been worn by me and it just gets shredded by me and re-sewn by me.
Well, one of my favorite parts of the documentary is when you give Ed Neal from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie one of your jackets, and indulge me. I'll set up the story a bit and then you can talk about it because it was really cool. But what was interesting about that whole experience is it was in Portland at the Living Dead Horror Convention, and it's when I first started filming you. We were just pretty early on into starting on the documentary, and the thing is, I didn't know you that well either. And how weird that I joined you at your table at this convention. Although I trusted you, we had done some horror swap meets before that, and I think we were getting to know each other pretty well. But hey, there's nothing like traveling out of state to a convention to get to know somebody really fast. Although we took separate cars, so it was probably better that we weren't stuck in a car with each other 3 hours each way. We would have been really sick of each other fast. At least you would have been sick of me really fast. But, and you getting there first let you get set up before I got there, because one thing you got to know about Spanky is when he's setting up his table at a convention, stay the fuck out of his way.
Yeah, I know what I'm doing.
You just like to do what you're doing, not be interrupted. Then once all you're set up, you're cool. But no, I get you. I get that. I say that half jokingly, but you're very directed and you know what you need to do. But once you're set up and the customers come, you're very friendly. And that's when the fun begins, which I think you probably learned that from the band days. You get serious when you set up, do your sound check. Then when the public comes, then you can relax and put on a show. Is that a good analogy?
That's what I do, and I try to pass out cookies in between the set. So,
Well, there you go. So, anyways, so we're at this convention, and you sold really cool T-shirts. I mean, you buy all these full retail for yourself. Then, when you get sick of them, you sell them off. So, most of them are practically new. Unlike someone that just buys this stuff to make a profit. I mean, you're just bringing your valuable full retail collection and movies, DVDs, VHS, posters, amazing horror soundtracks on vinyl. I mean, you've got the stuff that people want. So you always have a lot of people come to your booth. Well, anyway, so you've got this big booth, and I've got like 2 square feet of it in the corner. But I'm not really there to sell stuff. I'm there to videotape you. But I did have a token little section, which was fun because that made me appreciate, what it's like to be a vendor at these events. But what was so cool is that at that convention, they had a Texas Chainsaw Massacre section where they had several people from that, and Ed Neal, of course, from the original. And, to make a long story short, you guys connected, you showed him your jacket, and you gave him one, and he loved it. And he loved it so much, he came back to your booth and presented you with a poster from the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre with signatures from the original actors, including 2 who had passed away. I think it was Marilyn Burns and Gunnar Hansen,
mm-hmm.
plus Ed and, 1 or 2 more. I can't remember. But you guys really bonded. And for some reason, I was, getting confident and I was a little shyer but he was a nice guy, and he was kind of into what we were doing, so I got a lot of that on camera. Your interaction with him. And at these conventions, things happen so quickly, and it's hard to spend quality time with people. And I was just really struck with how much quality time you guys spent together. And after your interaction, he actually put your jacket on and was wearing it there at the convention. So I just want to know what that was like for you. And, we always want to have a really cool interaction with an idol or someone we admire. This was pretty darn cool. I'd say that's an A+ for interacting with, an actor you admire. But just what did that feel like to be more of a peer and to have him, wear your jacket, you as an artist, you as a clothing designer? How did that whole experience make you feel?
That was a successful moment because the entire time I knew that I had these jackets with me. Now they were either going to be with me or they were going to be something that I could get into the hands of somebody super cool. And so the whole super cool thing to me was going to be an actor that I was going to meet at any of the conventions, whether it was Seattle or California or wherever we were going to go in our future. So whenever I did get the jackets into somebody famous hands, that was a complete success. So that was total joy to have all of it put on video, to keep forever, because a lot of this that I've gotten to do, it's just a memory now. There's no way I have video of the other people. So that one's really good.
It was really good. And I think for the actors, sometimes we think, oh, they always get stuff from fans. Oh, they're always being fawned over. And that's not always the truth. And even if they are, a lot of them are still open to get something that's, meaningful and well thought out. And I think for, when you were there with Ed, I think that really struck him like, wow, what a nice, substantial, and very personal, gift you gave him.
Hmm. Yeah, people remember this one of the kind stuff, especially when they really like it. He'll remember me forever, and so will I.
And like, how many hours does it take to make one of those jackets that you embellished?
Oh, I could make the entire jacket in 3 or 4 days, probably, being really quick. But I have to fold it over and have some dry time in some weird areas, so I have to give it a little time to dry. But yeah, I can get it done pretty quick. 4 days.
Hmm. Well, we did a pretty good job of, I think, meeting people there. And the thing about these conventions is some people just plant themselves in a booth and fold their arms and cross their legs and sneer at everyone who walks by and, basically don't make many meaningful interactions. It's like they're daring everyone.
Yeah.
Seems like we had this spirit of, let's be friendly, let's meet people, let's learn about people, and let's just not always make it about us, but let's learn about the other people here too.
Yeah, it takes outgoing personalities to keep these things functioning properly, or it looks like a total like nerd hell. It's okay to mix it up with the nerds and whatever, but like if you don't got personality and you just kind of want to dress up and stand around like a rock, that I don't know what's exciting about that, and it makes the convention look bad. But a lot of us get out there and a lot of us will chit chat and meet each other and, throw your personality out there and you will have a really good experience meeting these people.
Yeah. And it's almost like everyone's going to these conventions waiting for someone else to set the tone, as opposed to setting their own tone or, creating a little party in their own booth to attract people.
Hmm.
Do you think we created a little party in our booth?
I think we have enough cool stuff that there's just endless conversations. You will get trapped if you walk into our area. You'll be trapped because we have too much to say and so much variety to show.
I think the real key to it all is at first, I didn't think our booth was well placed because we were facing this concrete block wall. But then it was like right across from the restrooms. And what's funny is everyone has to use the restroom at some point during the day, stars and celebrities included. So by default, we got to see every celebrity as they walked out of the bathroom.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of a vulnerable moment because they're like, oh, do they tuck their shirt in? Does anyone see them coming out of the John? So in that vulnerable moment, we step in. Hi! Oh look, it's Marilyn from the Munsters. Hi, Marilyn.
Yeah, we were kind of pulling them out of the bathroom.
And then Adrienne King from Friday the 13th, who was a sweetheart, and we got her on camera for the documentary. And these people were so nice, but it's kind of like it was easier to interact with them when they were away from their table. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, they're out and about. They feel a little bit more free. They don't have the next person in line right now.
And we both hate to grovel. I mean, you grovel more than I do when it comes to these celebrities. You have a lot of patience, and I admire that. But at the same time, it's like, and we've talked about this, you want to see them as an equal. You don't want that imbalance of they're the big star, we're the groveling fan. And it's sometimes hard to really weigh that out because, you're not just a casual fan at these events, you're a vendor and you're the drummer of Dead Vampires. I mean, you have your own celebrity in certain circles. So it's
Yeah.
very situational. And it's kind of how do you just blindly go up to Barbara Steele's table and say, I'm not just a groveling fan. I'm Count Spankula from Dead Vampires.
Well, I certainly said it every single time I could, and I made sure people would have CDs or albums throughout all the years that I went there. So if I was paying to get your autograph or a picture with you, I was also giving you my stuff for free. So
Hmm.
I did it as much as I could. Even if I wasn't paying for somebody or something like that, I would still give free stuff to everybody as I walked through the convention.
I think your last convention, Crypticon Seattle, didn't you kind of bond with Dee Wallace?
Yeah.
See, why couldn't we have been making the documentary that year? We could have totally got Dee Wallace on camera.
I don't know, but it was a very motherly moment and she's super cool. I'm so glad I talked to her and I like all of her movies, but Frightener sticks with me because she's so schizo in it and it's hard to play schizo, especially when you see her and how happy she is and
And she's one
even
of the friendliest celebrities at these conventions.
yeah, she's brought all this positivity and she has all these good reasons to. So she's full of good information and so yeah, my special moment with her, it's a hard one to talk about, but she's a mother.
Hmm. Well, this whole festival circuit or convention circuit is interesting. I think when we, started doing the documentary, I'd been to some conventions, but not a lot. I mean, that wasn't, a big experience for me. So for me, I got to see it a little more from the outside and learn as we went. And I think that was an interesting process because these fan conventions, they formalize the fan experience. They make these rules of, okay, here's the person at the table, here's a line, this is how much it costs for a photo or an autograph, this is how much it costs to have your picture taken with them. And it's so commodified. And it kind of threw me off at first. The first convention I was at where I actually had a table, I didn't realize the celebrities like charged you for an autograph. Like if you brought your own picture of them,
Hmm.
or an album or a video to sign, that a lot of them charge you. I thought, oh my God, I didn't know that. And there's this whole system where they have like a handler that works for the festival or the convention that kind of keeps track to make sure people pay. And they're kind of like the buffer so that the celebrity doesn't have to bring that up. So, what do you think of that whole process and how that gives this weird formalized fan and celebrity interaction?
Well, I think they need protection. They need somebody to care about watching their stuff while they can talk and everything. So, I don't mind it at all. I would like to have the job myself and be able to sit with them for the day and be able to do it. But like, I don't want to feel rushed. I mean, is it us that are rushing ourselves through the line when we're so concerned that our time is up, or what is it? But I'm not too crazy about meeting other people while I'm trying to meet somebody else, though. So if you're having a special moment, you're probably going to have a certain time you're going to want the handler to keep it quiet while you're having your moment. Is that what you mean? You just don't want somebody there while you really want to talk to somebody?
Well, just the fact that we're paying them to be nice to us for 20 seconds.
Right. It's very hooker money feeling. It'll always feel like a hooker moment to me, especially if it was like an old movie crush of yours at some point.
And you're not afraid to shell out some big bucks to get signatures. I mean, when I see you at these events, pretty much everything you're making at your booth, you're spending on autographs and merchandise
Right.
from other vendors.
Right. Look at how much we have to get rid of, and they just have to like sign and smile and possibly get up for a photo. It's like, holy cow. I mean, we're so underpaid, but we gotta be, we're an attraction to them. We're having a flea market to keep these people busy while they've possibly come to see you. We're kind of like the entertainment too, while they figure out how they're gonna go connect with you.
So, over the years, how many celebrity photo and signatures have you paid for?
Oh, I don't know. I've made a book, but it wasn't that many years to accrue so many.
Like more than 20?
Oh, for sure.
More than 50?
More than 50.
So, at $40 a pop, would you say you've spent over $2,000 on all them?
I don't know. I mean, sure, with the various prices, but I don't know. Some are from different places too. Like I think I would scoop up an autograph anywhere I possibly could. So if I was at a small wrestling event in Tacoma, Washington, and the Honky Tonk Man suddenly appears like he did, I'm getting his autograph for $5 or $10 or whatever it is. And so prices will vary, but if they really did come to that thing and they brought like a suitcase full of pictures and stuff, yeah, I want it. It's like a craving. And I do have a thing for wrestling like that. So I brought up a memory with Honky Tonk Man from Michigan from like 1985 or something, 87 maybe. But he remembered exactly where it was. And he said, "Oh, yeah, Kellogg Center or Kellogg Arena." And I'm like, oh, I had forgotten. And here he is right in front of me, remembering exactly where this incident is with him. That was cool.
So,
So
what's
he
a
got kind
stronger attraction for you? Straight tattooed rocker dudes or
they're all
straight muscled, oiled up wrestler dudes?
wrestler dudes.
Oh my God, the
Well,
tattooed rocker dudes will be so disappointed.
oh, so sorry. There's more muscle ones. There's more availability in the gay community for that. And so you can at least look at the pictures and know that it's true. And for the rock ones, I am sorry, but the gay rock scene is not full of tons of hot dudes. And when it comes down to like wondering who is the hot dude in the rock scene, it's kind of a mystery for me. I'm not as hot for the rock scene as I used to be. So,
Like, would you be really into Hulk Hogan
no, not Hulk. Not Hulk.
or like Shawn Michaels?
No. See, none of the long-haired blonde ones. Long hair was never my thing, so that eliminates long hair rock and long hair wrestlers.
Um, Triple H. He's got long hair.
Yeah.
Isn't it short now though? Now that it's short.
He was pretty hot though once he started to show himself, I remember. Um, I loved John Cena for a while and I don't anymore. I don't see how I did, but people look different at different times.
So one part of the documentary is showing just your massive collection, which is horror memorabilia, horror videos, both DVD and a lot of VHS, vinyl records, both soundtracks, vampire disco, and all this cool stuff, books, and your Fangoria magazines before you sold them on eBay, and toys, and video game merchandise, and Tinky Winky dolls that make noise. And I mean, one half of your house, the whole bottom part of your house was like, one part, amusement park, bookstore, video arcade, fun house. I mean, it just had so much cool stuff, and you had the space to display it. Figures, figurines. And I know since we started, doing the documentary, you've sold some of it off. But since we first, started doing the documentary 5 years ago, how has your attitude just toward collecting in general changed?
Well, I'm still a collector, and it's something that's really hard to stop doing. But I still am a collector. There's some Garbage Pail Kid things that are still happening, and I keep up with some modern stuff. There's Skinner is an artist that I still represent. So I just got some Skinner face masks, even though I made 700 myself. I still needed to do that. And, I brought it up to Lauren and he said, it's cool. We support rad artists. Hell yeah, we want Skinner's masks. So the artists behind GPK, we're really into that. The collecting thing is still there. It just depends on like how heated up is a certain collection right now. Over the past 2 years, it was Skylanders and that was a really fun collection to do. So it's
In the
completely
past year, you sold off your Skylander collection.
uh, only the extras and things like that. But I have the complete. I'm complete on all my master sets, and I've done all the work inside of them and everything. So it's like I don't just get the set. I take really good care of it and I preserve it. So I know everything about my figures I have, and I'm just not collecting them now because I have enough and it's done. And so the trading card world won't end, though. That's a really big deal.
Does your do your collections ever cause friction in your relationship?
Yes. Yeah. So this is my last year selling on eBay, so I have to really like bring it down with collecting and selling. But that's going to be a huge shift this next coming year. So
Wait, why
who
do you
knows?
say your last year? Is this something you just decided to do?
Oh, they're treating me like it's a store and I'm a business or something. So I'm not going to do that because I'm not. I'm still just a punk rocker who has creative stuff and like certain things for sale, but I'm not a business and I can't afford to do the taxes that they have tied to it now. So I have been giving a lot away. So mainly everything turned into giving. And
Well,
since it's
one
Christmas,
valuable
and
collectible you had were those old Masters of the Universe play sets, the
yeah,
big
that was
plastic castles and all that. And you sold those, didn't you?
Yeah, the castle itself was worth like $2,000 to $3,000.
Oh my God.
Just the castle, yeah.
Now, did you sell all those to one dealer?
Mm, no, it did get split up into three different countries, really. Spain took that big, important castle, though. But when I collect, I need all the pieces. So a castle like that, it was me who put all the pieces together. And it's just kind of something that I do in a weird Rain Man collector way, is that I like the assembly of it. And I like to say that this is completed.
One
So I've
thing we
worked
could
really
make an
hard to.
entire documentary on you is just you and your Garbage Pail Kids collection.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about numbers and putting everything in order and knowing what's missing. And I know exactly what's missing in all of those sets. And most people would not know how to look at a wall and understand how I would be able to tell you what's missing, or the majority is complete because I fixated on it for so long I completed it.
See, one fear I had with this documentary is that when people saw it, they would see, and on the one hand, this punk rock guy, very working class, man of the people, not afraid to get his hands dirty, works at the food bank, very giving, very socially conscious. And then on the flip side, not afraid to, put down a few $1,000s for a Masters of the Universe playset or how many thousands on, an instant Garbage Pail Kids collection. And it's
Mhm.
sort of like on the one hand, and I know you've lived, off top ramen at times in your life, like we all have, the lean, periods, especially when you're in the band. But it's kind of like, reconciling these two worlds, top ramen punk rocker, and this guy that thinks nothing of building up these, $1,000 collections. I mean, did you ever think you could get to the point in your life where you had the luxury to indulge in this collecting?
No, no. It's just something that I have never been able to stop doing. It's another show. That's a um Dr. Phil show we'll have to work on. The
Right.
intervention. Yeah, there's nothing I've been able to keep, so it's been a constant rotation. So like if you had something for a certain amount of time, you're gonna have to return it back into the wild. And so one of the things that I would say that makes it hard to keep relationships really is because you're always becoming like a seller. So people can look at you like you're always just trying to sell something or something. So, but when you always want to be a store, you always do want to sell something. So I have to close the door to that want for selling, even if I'm selling it for cheap to another store that wants to resell. There's still just this need for getting things and having to resell them at some point.
Well, in the documentary, you have some scenes with Ernie, aka Helen Bed, and you guys are actually on the computer on eBay and talking about the toys you remembered from your childhood and how, as an adult, you seek out those toys to bring back your childhood memories. And I know when I was editing the documentary, to me, that was kind of like the theme. That's kind of what struck me after 5 years is that and the band. Your life has been this way to tap into what formed you as a child. You know, watching Kiss, listening to Kiss, and watching the monster shows and watching the Monster Host, and you as an adult creatively using your art and using your collecting as a way to tap back into that ideal that you formed in your mind when you were a kid.
Yeah, I'm never growing up. I'm always going to be that kid that always liked these toys and did these things and listened to that music or something. But when you're in a relationship with somebody, you're not always 100% available to be yourself at all times. So you have to like share the room and share the air and whatever. So if Lauren and I are different people and we're not completely obsessed with horror movies at the moment, we're not going to be like having this horror movie vibe right then. So that kind of stops me from listening to certain things at certain times or whatever. But if I was single or if I was in another relationship with another person that was just completely wild and crazy about music all the time, I think I would be wild and crazy about music all the time. So my surroundings are basically uh, whatever is going on in my life. And so that's why I have so many gears and so many different styles of music I listen to and so many different things I will watch. And but when it comes down to a creative something I want to do, it's always going to be like my favorite styles combined and trying to be that again. Something a very Pee-wee's Playhouse, very comedy horror, and always punk rock inspired, crafty, funny thing. And a garage rock too, just a low budget punk rock vibe. That's pretty much what everything is going to happen out of me.
In the
And
documentary, your husband Lauren appears in it. And there's a meaningful moment when you guys are talking about your first date or the first time you go out to a movie together to the theater, and how very early on it kind of showed he had a much lower tolerance for horror, especially horror that hits home in sort of a domestic violence way when you guys saw Rob Zombie's Halloween remake. And it was really interesting to hear both your sides of how that first date affected you, where you were introducing him to something you really liked, which was horror movies, and you quickly learned that he didn't like horror movies as much as you did, and this movie in particular he especially didn't like. And it really, I'm surprised you guys had a second date after that night.
yeah, it's it's impossible to explain because I always was into the 80s horror and I hated the 90s horror and I certainly hated the 2000 horrors and that kind of stuff. So when you're going to see a new movie, which is Halloween, and I can't even remember what year it came out, um, I am really ready for it because, for one, it's Halloween and I've liked them all so far. And then Rob Zombie's House of a Thousand Corpses was amazing. So this must be totally amazing. So I've got another huge need to see this movie. And yeah, but I have to deal with the time period. And so this time period has made a certain style of movie that I'm not really into. And I'm bringing Lauren. So he's like, sure, whatever, let's go. Can't be that bad. Well, I didn't realize that like Lauren has been able to watch nearly anything, pretty much anything. I'm pretty shocked when I hear that he's already seen something and I haven't even seen it because it was gross. So he's seen it all, and that was just, it was such an annoying movie. It was just like so much screaming and bitching and kind of like family rapish kind of shit. But it was so unfun, and that Lauren was so cringing and having so much unfun that I didn't even want to be in the theater. I was like, ew, this is really ugly. Like I hate being with people that are really annoyed. So yeah, it made an impact on me that it was real annoying too. I guess if I would have seen it without him, maybe I would have just gone over my head and been like, whoa, that was really like it's just a graphic movie. Just check, done. But I don't know, since it bugged him so much, it sticks with me that people don't want to see all this abuse if they've been abused.
How have you
So
integrated
yeah,
your your horror lifestyle with Lauren? I mean, do you come together on certain things? Do you know what spectrum of horror he'll enjoy watching with you and which things to just watch by yourself?
He loves anything to do with creatures and fantasy and mainly fantasy and a huge sci-fi. So he's seen everything sci-fi, and I mean everything. The horror, he's mainly seen it all, but as a preference, he doesn't like to watch things that are too old anymore. It's just going way too far back for him. But I wouldn't be surprised if he'd already seen it. So he's been a TV addict for his whole life, I feel. So it's amazing what he remembers and has seen. He can watch a lot, but my interest in horror has gone downhill. So I'm still waiting for cool things to come back.
How about music wise? Where do you guys meet?
We're really only into disco together. The rest of it's kind of hit or miss. He's okay with whatever I'll play, but disco is his passion. So he's kind of doing the kids in the hall Gleeman X stuck in the favorite moment of your life with a certain playlist to disco.
Hmm. And how important in the end is it that you have those types of common interests with your partner? Do you have to like everything to be with someone, like the same things?
No, but it does help. It keeps the conversation going in a certain direction or whatever until whatever blows up. But no, I think we're just our balance, we're just totally leveled out and available to be around each other no matter what our mood is. I mean, that's nice. I feel just because somebody isn't going to obsess on something or stare at a picture just as long as I want to, doesn't mean that they don't like it as much as I do, and it's okay if they don't. But that's pretty much the extent of it. I mean, what are you going to do if you love a record so much? Go listen to it 100 more times by yourself until you burn out? Like, it's okay to like different things, and um, it if you're identical twins, cool, have a blast together.
Hmm.
I feel I'm in a very different relationship right now, and that's fine. And we find ways to change as we get older, and it improves. It's awesome. I feel like we're a very progressive relationship.
Hmm. During the course of being the subject of this documentary and being interviewed many times and kind of being under the microscope, what's the biggest personal revelation you had?
Oh, well, probably just learning as I get older and realizing going through death is very interesting and sad and terrible, and you will learn from bad things. No matter how bad it feels, you will learn from bad things, and that's really eye-opening. So I consider myself somebody who's had an awakening because I just woke up to so much scary, scary shit, and I've become wise since I've observed this crazy world, and that's just eye-opening. Oh my God. It continues every day. Just keep learning. Stay smart.
During the course of the documentary, did it bring back an appreciation of your work with dead vampires? Meaning, did you let go of some of that and did you regain some of your pride in what you had created?
I don't think I've ever let go of it, which is kind of the thing about me that maybe it's all in my head, but I'm not the one who's ever really let go of it. I had to put something on pause and things changed, but I've always been interested in this thing that I've worked a lot on and I've accumulated so many pieces for, like just to have the tapes, I'm kind of the golem of the tapes. Like they are my precious. and I have been a keeper to it, so I've never let go. Otherwise, I would have thrown this stuff away. So I cannot let it go. It is something that I'm super proud of, and so it makes me it makes me feel like there's more to share, and I would like to put it out in another format. I've always wanted to do a box set. I just don't know how to mass produce something right now, and
Right
there is a
before
lot to
we started filming you for the documentary, you had just put out a vinyl album of the Dead Vampires. So you were the one that took something that I think had only been on a CD before. So you
Mhm.
were already in the process of trying to revitalize that and preserve that, but in a really cool vinyl pressing.
Yeah, and then there's other records too. So there's demo records, which keeps us in that cramps kind of territory of a beginner band and take all of this stuff out of rock and roll to get this sound. It's very stripped down, Dead Vampires. So um, it can all be digital, but still, I think as a package, it looks so much cooler. So for me and for the collector world, I see a very small, limited amount of box sets that needs to be created.
But out of everyone in the band, I mean, you're the archivist.
Hmm.
That has fallen to you, which makes sense because, you're the collector. This seems like an extension of, you're collecting, and you're also good at organizing and taking care of. Like when someone goes to your home and sees your collection, everything is, alphabetized and, protected in a sleeve or, all these things. You take a lot of care in what you're collecting, whether it's, your personal collection or the Dead Vampires Archive.
Hmm.
How did you get that way? Were you like a librarian's assistant when you were a kid?
I wanted to be. I don't know. I've been sorting everything ever since I can imagine. Memory was my first favorite game. I remember kicking ass at it. And any kind of strategy game like that, I was very interested in playing. So when I got one of those like toolkits, the wall ones with all the drawers and you can put screws in them, I got one of those and one of those little labeler tag maker machines and just started labeling all of my drawers. That's where the real organization got happening.
See, when you're an old man, I could totally see you curating a real specialized museum.
Yeah. Oh, I would. I wanted to do the Garbage Pail Kids Museum in Seattle, something like EMP, where, not that big, but a cafe museum for Garbage Pail Kids where the artists and stuff, anybody could visit and do signings. And we would always have and be knowledgeable and the kings of having the most Garbage Pail Kid stuff in the city. I really wanted to do that. So I wish so bad I could have a business that would succeed in the weird world of this stuff. I just don't have the power of like Mad Magazine or Tops to do
Mhm.
this.
You could have created the Hard Rock Cafe of Garbage Pail Kids.
Absolutely. Yeah, when the Kiss Coffee House came about, we knew of the exact area where that should go. And we even had property that we could have put that on over in Tukwila. So every time I drive by it, it still looks like it should have been a Kiss Coffee House to me. But that was like, I don't know, 15 years ago.
But do you really want to deal with Gene Simmons' lawyers?
No, not anymore. No.
I'm
So,
sure, can you imagine him not intervening if anyone outside of himself would start a Kiss related business?
yeah, see, so everything changes. So 15 years ago, yeah, I was obsessed and crazy about it. Would I have been a fun Kiss coffee house owner? Yes. Am I glad I didn't do that? Yes. I don't need a Kiss coffee house. So Our thoughts are really crazy at certain times of our lives and what we can do with them. So, to the dead vampires thing, I'm so glad that all my thoughts swirled into this weird time period and that thing. The whole entire thing could happen with everybody involved, and it was so awesome.
Well, it just seems like the stuff you do, like even in your home, your displays are almost like retail displays that, for all the work you put into it, wouldn't it be nice if more of the public could see that work that you do?
Yeah. Well, I go through my phases where I want to be on social media or I don't want to be on social media. And sometimes if I do that, then I have photos of everything and it's all organized. And, I'm able to present digitally. And I think we're in a time where that's all we can do right now, anyways. So I've shown my digital collection and then I've just put it away for a while.
Well, what's interesting to see is that you have definite phases in your life and in your creative life. And we've talked about this before, but you've had enough time in between projects to think, okay, do I still like doing that? Do I have an interest in that? Do I want to try something new? And you've given yourself a lot of downtime. It seems like collecting has filled up that creative energy. Do
Right.
you see yourself going into a new phase where you'll say, okay, I'm going to go all in and dump all my focus and creative energy into a new creative pursuit?
No, I don't see what it. I see a couple projects that I will work on, but I don't see any like hardcore change that I'm going to go through right now. Because I know how to make clothes and jackets and masks and stuff, and I think I'll continue to repeat those types of things. Um, but and help with the movies and stuff. But no, I don't have anything that nothing is pulling me right now. I've looked at electronic drums. I totally like them. We've talked about getting them. I think I'm putting that on hold right now because if I get electronic drums, then I'm going to need a band to work with. Like there will be this agitation or something that I'll need to like be working on that. And I don't think I'll be able to like get anything out of it on my own right now. So I've got ideas, but they're creative and I still like drawing. So my drawings can turn into clothes too. I like that. I like making clothes right now.
Big thing you've done since we started the documentary is you sold off your band equipment. And when we first started, when I first met you, you still had a full drum set and it was set up and you could play it whenever you wanted to. And you had amplifiers and guitars. And at what point did you decide to sell those and say, you know what? That's just not a possibility right now. I just don't want them around. What motivated you to sell those?
Oh, well, I think I really wanted to downsize so much that I eventually wanted to move. I wanted to save money. I never was gonna play music again, I think, when I got rid of all that stuff. And also it was very used and it had been like stored in, cold places throughout the house and it just wasn't my favorite type of gear. So if I was to do something again, I wanted to sound good and I wanted it to sound like it was coming from a much better gear. So my old punk rock sound was pretty much dying for me because it sounded like shit on my own. I didn't want to sound like shit anymore. So an electronic drum set has 135 settings. So I think to get something like that, you can turn on a much clearer sound.
Well, one thing is when you've got the stuff sitting around and you're not using it, it's kind of this reminder and causes friction. So even
Yeah.
if later on you want to buy some drums again, wasn't there something freeing when you just said, you know what, I'm going to sell this just so it's not reminding me of what I'm not doing? And then just say, you know what, I give myself permission that if I don't want to pursue this anymore, I don't have to.
Right. And also, it's kind of a power button for me to just shut it off. Like, if I really don't want to do this and I'm that like irritated with it, then if I get rid of it and I've already gotten it out of my way and I've made it even harder to do, then I really have to stop. So you're right. Yeah, it's a hard stop and a end to a process.
You know,
I
another
didn't
thing,
think
well,
about
another
it.
thing about what you did besides, play drums, you wrote songs too.
Yeah.
And that you don't necessarily need. And you wrote a lot of lyrics. And one of my favorite parts of the documentary that eventually got cut was I had you recite a lot of your songs, like as voiceovers. And I don't know, I just put them in odd places, but I was so charmed by your lyrics, and they were very out there. They were very raw and explicit, but they also kind of had a sense of humor to them. And especially, when you're reciting lyrics that are meant to be actually sung and shouted to a punk rock beat, with a band, it's kind of funny to hear them recited as poetry.
Exactly. They were totally meant to be screaming with like dirty Leathermen everywhere. Like it was supposed to be like the horror hut, the eagle on its hottest night kind of rock band is playing. And that's where my fantasy band was, but I couldn't find any crazy Leathermen that were doing punk rock to join a band like that. So yeah, when you just read my lyrics like poetry, it is pretty funny. But I wanted to scream them so bad because I wanted to be like the Mukilteo Fairies and be another extremely hardcore punk band out there. I don't know, hardcore to me was always the toughest, and it was kind of that revenge of, we're not weak. It was a revenge to get to that level of screaming punk and be that hardcore. So that's where I was when I was writing really dirty lyrics about wild, wild sex with uniform men and all that kind of stuff, and had you know, I needed the nerve. I needed these guys to be around me so I'd even have the nerve to be in a band that could be that crazy. But my mind was in that zone of porn punk rock band. Where
Do
is
you,
it?
do you remember some of the song titles?
Oh God, Spank Me Hanky, and I don't know, they were basically about like cop fetishes because when I first turned 18 and got into adult bookstores, I learned about uniforms. And so one of the things was uniforms and cop fetishes and leather outfits or firemen or whatever. You had your choice, basically. There was a whole section. So,
And what made it even more interesting is that you wrote some of these while you were working in a bagel shop.
right. Oh my, yeah. I don't have all my lyrics with me about that kind of stuff, but that was the theme. I wanted triple X porn gay punk bands.
Now, I didn't ask you, but did you ever get the Dead Vampires to perform any of those songs?
No, no. I knew that was mine. I figured if there was going to be ever a time where I was going to sing, I was going to surprise them with something that I had written like that. But I always kept them under my pillow basically because for a while, I couldn't stop writing lyrics. I was writing them all the time and I kept everything.
Well, that was one of the rare concessions I made. It's not like you were totally against me using that in the documentary. I think in the end, it was like we had so much material that just always brought it to a different direction and kind of stopped the flow. It was like a non sequitur. They just came out of nowhere. You reciting these songs, which I thought was really great. I mean, I was endlessly entertained by hearing you recite them, but in the end, they weren't just adding up to the overall flow that we were going for.
Yeah, it's extreme porn, what I was talking about, and in a weird way, you can't control who's ever going to see the movie and all that kind of stuff, and you can't control like what you've said in the past or whatever. So when I say shit like that, I really shouldn't even care who hears it. So that's kind of the thing about having this explicit life, you know. Why are we shaming ourselves even when we're trying to tell a story, you know?
Hmm. And I think for your song lyrics, to just put them out there without context, that's hard because even what you just said now adds even more context for me that these were made to be screamed, at a gay leather bar and just, this whole arena that you imagine it being performed in, as opposed to this spoken word while, I'm showing other images in the documentary. It's such a different context.
Hmm. Yeah, because limp wrist is something that you can actually look at and go, wow, now that's what I'm talking about. He wore the shortest shorts, his ass is falling out. If he's not just in a jock strap, he's completely hairy. He's walking around telling everybody he's a slut, pretty much. And like, I mean, when you see that, it's like, that's what I'm talking about. That's what I was trying to be. And before limp wrist happened, that was my vision. And so when they happened, I'm like, wow, you made my dreams come true. I mean, limp wrist is what I wished for in my lyrics. Now I
Mhm.
can look at them and somebody else did it and somebody else did it with no shame and they did it with a hot body, you know, pure sex. It's awesome.
Well, one thing that's happened since we first started, making the documentary 5 years ago, five plus, is just this hyper awareness of queer horror, using horror, analyzing it, and getting a lot of gay subtext in horror movies, whether or not they're overtly gay, but just the way that, gay stories have been told through horror movies of, someone being bullied or picked on. There's a lot of ways you can read a horror movie and identify with a character, whether or not they're overtly gay, it still mirrors a gay experience. And in times when people couldn't be as overtly gay, they could get some meaning out of these um, kind of veiled gay stories within horror movies, which sounded so scholarly that left you speechless.
Oh, what would it be? Probably
Well, the other thing I was going to
Jeepers.
say, but the main thing that happened was, I think the documentary Scream Queen
Yeah.
about the making of Nightmare on Elm Street 2, and you actually meeting some of the people involved with that, and it's kind of like that was all going on. And I think when we were getting footage at horror conventions, meeting people who are overtly, gay people in the horror industry and embracing that, that's kind of exploded in the past 5 years. It took a long time, but even, shows like Dragula in the past couple years, that
Mhm.
wasn't even, we wouldn't even really thought of that 5 years ago. And it just seems to have accelerated in these last 5 years since we first embarked on this ambitious documentary that we made.
Yeah, I think it just takes asking everybody their story when you meet them and finding out where their beginning was. But it seems to me that they're all about the same. Like a whole bunch of us grew up in front of our televisions and we're finally out and about and we're finally available to meet each other, probably because of social media. You know, that we didn't have it so no one could hear anybody. And so everybody felt super alone until they all came up with their gay versions of horror and now they have outlets to share them. Every year at Crypticon, it got bigger and bigger and bigger. So there's other cities that are way bigger than us. So, you know, the horror scenes are way big out there too. And I'm seeing it is big in New York. And you're right. Meeting the Queen crew is a good thing. I can't believe that we're we're finally meeting similar people.
Well, it seems like horror fans in the gay community kept it pretty quiet for so long. And just all at once, it's like saying, yeah, a lot of gay people love horror films. And now that, the internet is making it easy to connect, and, how many, gay horror podcasts and sites there are now. And just like, it's like the floodgates just opened and said, yeah, there's this huge, formerly kind of quiet horror legion within the gay community that's saying, yeah, we've loved horror movies forever. Now it's just a lot more easy to talk about it.
Yeah, and sometimes I see people that I wouldn't assume that are gay, and maybe it's because we have all been in a bubble. Like when you are trying to date somebody, you're not really talking to everybody. So there's a level of nerd that I see out at Crypticon that's kind of like, I wouldn't have thought you were gay because, you weren't really interested in it anyways, but that you just find out, you just, as it keeps on going and going and going and about finding out all these more gay people, you're like, well, they're not all here for you to do. They're all here because they're gay and they're showing themselves as this is the community. So, like, when you open your eyes to that, there's a lot of people out there and they're all looking like a giant gay horror scene. And it's cool. It's cool. I think we're opening our eyes to it.
Exactly. And I think for you, to be so out there in so many ways, it's also showing there's just not one kind of gay horror fan, too. It's not like you just like, Nightmare on Elm Street 2. Oh, that's still cool. Or you just like whatever happened to Baby Jane. You can be a gay horror fan and like, way out there things that, most of us haven't heard of, or you might like, John Carpenter's The Thing, or you might like more sci-fi action oriented horror. That's the other thing that happens is once these floodgates open, you suddenly realize, there's lots of variety within that, and there's not just one type of horror that all gay people like.
Yeah, they like it all. There's just so many different kinds of people. So you got to let everybody be all mixed
But
up and
but
like
we
the.
want these touch points too. That's why I think Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2, that's a starting point that we can all kind of come together and talk about.
Hmm.
Or if you saw it when it first came out, or if you saw it thinking, am I the only one that thinks this is really gay? It's
Yeah,
kind of like for decades people had to kind of ponder that in silence. Now suddenly they're given permission to say, no, you weren't the only one. We all thought that. It's like this light bulb goes off. And I think it's like the people that kind of give us those moments we can kind of have that, common recognition with each other. And that's, I think, what has brought a lot of people together. Just that one documentary, Scream Queen, has caused so much discussion, brought a lot of people together, at conventions. So we need stuff like that too, those initial things that bring people together to talk about it.
we do. We needed to know who cared enough to assemble something like this. And how long did you care about this topic? It goes really far back. It takes somebody a very long time to make something because, first of all, to think like if Roman makes this movie, he also grew up throughout the entire time watching this movie and knowing about this movie forever. So the entire experience has been in him to even be able to create something like that. It took his whole life to be able to make the movie in a way because you had to see it and you saw it at the right time and look what you did with that.
Yeah. And I think for someone like, who's the main star that it's about, who was in the movie?
Mark Patton.
Mark Patton, on the tip of my tongue. Mark Patton. It's interesting because someone like that has had enough time and kind of distance since that first came out to bring an interesting perspective. And what makes that documentary unique is not, just the gay subtext in that movie, but the fact that Mark was also gay and how this became a very personal thing and how it affected his career. But just to see someone to have all that time to reflect on it and to see how times have changed, in the 35 years since uh, Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2 came out. 35 years. I saw that in the theater when it came out in 1985. Oh my God.
We're in like a Star Trek time compared to what that was. It was magazine articles and newspaper clippings back then. And if you think about all the stuff that Mark went through and, the abuse of the homophobia and all that kind of crap, and then we got social media now, these are very different time periods, and there's too much to say about what you can say about that topic. Are you going to attack that movie these days, or are you going to praise that movie these days? But for the most part, we're all on the side of praising this movie, and that's the good thing about this documentary is that it has a happy ending, that we're all proud of this movie and we do have the story out and we're able to celebrate it.
Mm-hmm. Well, what I like about the documentary of You is with an explosion of gay cinema and documentaries covering so much more. I mean, things wide open, people who are normally underrepresented, that even within, this explosion of gay media, that it's still nice to see someone like you who isn't always represented either, meaning a gay punk rocker or this guy that loves to collect horror memorabilia who just happens to be gay. That's another level to this of showing, representation. And I just think it's really cool that you're a representation that I don't see that often in a documentary.
Right, I would agree. I'm I don't know. I give myself a pat on the back. I'm proud to be myself, and I'm proud to be a good person walking around in this world. And I'm proud that I've been a part of so many creative things, and I've seen so many creative people. And I encourage people to be creative. And I'll always be a fan of up and coming people. Just, as long as we keep showing ourselves that we're good, then you will be noticed.
Yeah, and I think with you, I was struck by, what's that saying? Do you? You do you, Spanky.
Hmm.
And in that, if you want to make jackets with rhinestones on it, you do that. Or
Yeah.
if you want to collect Garbage Pail Kids cards, you do that. You're not doing it to impress anyone or doing it because your best friend is doing it. You're strictly doing all these things because they come from you and you're not being forced to do them by anyone else.
Right. I tend to stay out of people's traps for sure. I'd much rather spend time alone if I'm going to feel trapped by anybody. So, um, I like working with you because you always have a new creative project ready to go, and your presentation is amazing. And it is really hard to say no to you. And as long as you're around people who always have something fun to do, then it's easy to go along with it. And you know,
I know. I'll probably be 80 years old and calling you up saying, Spanky,
let's
let's
do
make a
something
movie.
fun. Yeah, I love that.
You can still get up in your walker. Come on, you got to do stunts. Let's go.
See,
But isn't it fun to do something where you're still taking a risk?
oh, absolutely. Yeah, like I think I tried to censor my art a little bit recently, and I thought I would try to make it less angry, and I'm like, I don't know if I can. I'll just keep on being me, and if it comes out angry, it's totally fine. Even though it's a drawing or you're making more shirts or whatever, Something about my stuff is very loud, and I feel like it's edgy. My clothes and everything, every statement I write on something, it's always going to be edgy. So it's a little bit of like walking in dangerous territory all the time.
See, one thing you and I have in common, and here I'm going to speak for you. You can correct me if I'm wrong. But I think this is one good thing we have in common that bonds us is to a certain extent we're both sort of fame whores. And even though we logically know it's healthy to not idolize famous people, and for the most part we play it cool, you know. We're not groveling fans, except for you when you're around Guar. But other than that, we play it cool. But we still love that we love our celebrities. I mean, you loved Wendy O. Williams, and even
Yeah.
after her passing, you continue to love her. And you know, I idolize, you know, Grace Jones since high school, and you know, we would both kill to meet Debbie Harry, and I'm sure, you know, actors and creators. I still like that. I mean, wouldn't you hate to totally give that up to not be excited about a creative person that you idolize?
Yeah, I can't give it up. So therefore, I will change gears and I will follow a new person once I realize there's more people out there than whoever you were just done idolizing. And so open your eyes to the next creative person and respect them for a while. And that's why this continues to change. And there's always somebody else that I will pay attention to. You know, somebody else's time is up if they're not as exciting anymore. They show some shitty side or whatever. It's kind of like, I'm done with this for now and I'm going to go pay attention to somebody who's exciting and happy or whatever they are, whatever gets you at the time. Maybe they're angry and you love them for that, but it's a
And may,
mix.
and maybe it's good just to admire them from afar. Like you don't have to meet them. Like if I met
Yeah.
Grace Jones, what the hell would I say to her?
Right.
But it's still nice to be excited to, you know, find an old magazine with her on the cover, or if you really love someone, to buy a book of photos of them or their memoir or their autobiography, or just to collect their old albums. You know, it's just part of the spice of life to have these people who really affected you creatively.
Yeah. There's still some of them, and I will see when their stuff pops up. It's still good to see.
Except when you like that, you go on a buying binge on Amazon and eBay and buy
Yeah.
everything they've ever produced.
Yeah, well, I just tried to do that with Angeline, and I think the most of the people that have seen pictures of Angeline do not know what she sounds like musically, and if they do, they only know a few songs. And if you know just a few songs, well, you have not heard there are so many songs by her. And so I think to take in Angeline, you better hear like at least 20 some songs from her and realize she's freaking cool. I love that stuff,
But
you
it's so
know?
nice that you can like Angeline, who has sort of this 80s girl group, retro 60s girl group sound by way of 80s pop, you know? I mean, she,
Like the Cars and punk and like raw go-go's and like totally so obviously I'm gonna be a slut no matter what. I love that.
but you can like something a little kitschy and campy like Angeline, yet still love a hardcore punk band at the same time.
Yes.
Whereas some people couldn't reconcile both of those things. And that's what's so cool. It's expected. Oh, yeah, he's going to like Angeline, of course. She's kitschy and campy. Well, you know, don't just paint Spanky in that one stroke. He's going to like some new wave and some goth and some thrash metal, or you know, some
Mhm.
G.G. Allen or whatever. And
Yeah,
that's what makes it kind
yeah.
of you interesting, is you're also not just going to be dictated like, you know, you can only like dance divas.
Right. People that pigeonhole themselves like that, find a way out. I don't know what to tell you. There's not only one genre to stick with.
And for those who really want to know Spanky, he's the kind of friend that will make you an Angeline mixtape and burn it on a CD for you so you can listen to it in your car.
Oh, absolutely.
Didn't you
I'll
also
make
make me
sure you
a
hear everything cool. If we're hanging around, I will make sure to announce everything cool I can within our amount of time of hanging out.
and what was the other one? You had another mixtape on CD that started out with was it the Christmas tree scene from Female Trouble, like the dialogue?
I don't think I have that. I have as many John Waters songs as I can get though, but there's a lot. And Debbie Harry did do Polyester theme song with Tab Hunter, and that's a hard song to get.
Oh my God. Well, you did record on that Female Trouble theme song sung by Divine.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's a hard song to get too.
And you
Really hard.
put some Edith Massey on that. Was it Big Girls Don't Cry?
Yeah, she at least she has a record for that. Yep.
Oh my God. See, at least, like John Waters is such a good meeting point for so many people.
Hmm.
Because he's kind of, people say he's kind of campy, but he's really more punk rock, more DIY. He's got, on the surface, like this campy kind of feel, but deep down, he's kind of punk rock.
Yes, part of the original punk scene where punks were just bratty, thuggy shit shit stirrers and, they're just brats. Well, that was his scene.
I mean, deep down, don't we all want to be part of Divine's high school squad in Female Trouble?
Of course. When you're in a bratty mood, of course you do.
Cutting class, hanging out in the hall, smoking, and saying how much you hate your teachers and everything, and how you're
Yeah.
gonna take your Christmas presents and take them back and get the money.
It was so everybody at school too. So it was actually happening.
Oh my
We're
God.
just acting like that.
If you could go back to high school knowing what you know now, would you?
No, I hate school. I absolutely hated high school. Knowing what I know now, oh my God, it would just be like work. I think I still run into the same kind of dumb people, but not at work. And I got it all under control at work. So it's just when I have to go into the real world and, that's like school, being around school places. How are you going to react?
Well, if you were Drew Barrymore, what was that movie where she was an adult and had to go back to high school undercover?
I
Never
don't,
been kissed.
oh my God. See, I don't know. I just remember just one of the guys where you have to go back to school and be something you don't want to be.
Like 21 Jump Street.
Yeah.
And you go
Okay.
undercover as a narcotics officer. Oh my God. Well, we'll wrap up here in a minute. Obviously, we need to have you on more podcasts because we have much more to talk about. But I think this was about enough for today. And
Okay.
besides, I'm kind of getting hungry and I want to eat some sugar free chocolate.
Oh, good. Well, it was good to be with you again.
Well, tell me before we kind of sign off here for people who are undoubtedly going to see the documentary, Spanky Was a Punk Rocker. Just give a brief little preview of, what you think they'll enjoy about it.
I think they will enjoy the dead vampires after they see the documentary, but they should enjoy me and you. They should just enjoy us as cool people that have come together to make this little movie that is about somebody who doesn't get enough recognition, and there's plenty of stuff out there that represents the gay community, but not enough stuff out there that represents toy collecting and unique music and a little horror punk band called Dead Vampires.
And what's this crazy thing we're going to do next Saturday?
We're going to do a script reading with Kevin M. Glover, who is a vampire, also a gay vampire, which is a thing that I keep in my mind at all times, that I love gay vampires. So we're going to make a fun day out of hanging out with Kevin and figuring out what we're going to do next.
See, it was just inevitable that, we drew a line in the sand with this documentary, and now gay vampires are popping into our lives.
Yeah.
People we've admired from afar for years. Kevin, he wrote and starred in Love Bites, the world's first gay romance vampire story.
Which I just bought that and Venus Flytrap on DVD yesterday, and I will be getting them as soon as possible and watching them right away.
Oh my God. And he'll be sitting at your dining table, drinking your coffee in 6 days.
Excellent. I hope I get them before that because I want to hear the commentary.
I mean, he gives good commentary. Oh my God. That is one of the best DVD commentaries I've ever heard on the Love Bites DVD. Amazing, which he does with David Dakota, who, if you're listening, David Dakota, you will be on my podcast soon, someday.
Yeah, we're waiting.
We're putting it out there. Well, thank you, Spanky, aka Spankula the Count, aka Count Spankula. So say one last little goodbye to the audience, and then I'm going to click you off.
Oh, goodbye, you gay monsters.